If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will truly show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will truly show it. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. And if you're happy and you know it, say I am.
I am.
If you're happy and you know it, say I am.
I am.
If you're happy and you know it, then your face will truly show it. If you're happy and you know it, say I am.
I am.
We have some new cards. Y'all filled out some jar cards, right? If you haven't filled out a card, I don't know if we have any extras here today, but we'll see who it is. So I didn't take a look at who it was. Oh, she's not here. Can I put it back?
Yeah, put it back.
Can I? Because I would love for her to be here to read her card. All right. All right, I'll put it on top, so I'll pick it next week, so you're my witness. All right. Hopefully she'll be here next week so she can write it. All right, let's see what this one is. Oh, there's no name on this one. Okay. So we filled out these cards at our anniversary. We are 6 years old in July. And so these are the a little bit new questions on the card. So why Spiritual Soul Center? Why Spiritual Soul Center? This person says Spiritual Soul Center is open and receptive to everyone, loving, warm, and kind. Well, yes, thank you. What have you discovered here, or what are you hoping to find? It just feels good to be here and has a positive, lasting effect. Wow. How does it feel here, or how are you hoping it will feel? Warm, welcoming, and very positive. And how will you enrich this space in our community? I will bring my best energy here and radiate it out to everyone. So thank you. So let's take a deep breath in as we begin again. And feel what it feels like just to be present in this moment. There's a great soul card that we've given out here before that says, leave everything as it is and rest your weary mind. To leave it all as it is and to rest into this one exquisite moment now. And in this moment there is nothing we need, no place else to be. There is simply the moment. It is such a gift that we give ourselves in remembering that the moment is where all life is lived. This very, very moment. Not in the past, not in the future, but now. And there is where we find peace. There is where we find that place of ease and grace. And if we know that it's available to us, we know that it's available to every living being. If we simply take a moment, we breathe in and we breathe out, and we know that peace is available right here, right now. So as we imagine those who are suffering, those who are ill at ease, those who are frustrated, confused, we know this for them that they cannot know for themselves. That peace resides in them at their very soul. We offer that to them through our consciousness that knows that truth. And so it is. Amen.
You call me strong, you call me weak, but still your secrets I would keep. You took advantage of the times I never let you down. You stumbled in and bumped your head. If not for me, then you'd be dead. I put you up and put you back on solid ground. If I go crazy, then will you still call me Superman? If I'm alive, and where will you be there, holding my hand?
every day people die. Young people, old people, some tragically and all of a sudden, some after this excruciating long exit, right? All the time, people die. You know, 2 people in our community just died who were very, very beloved. I didn't know either of them. One was in the arts community and one was a local chef or a restaurateur, okay? And that guy, his name was James Smith. James Smith, you think I remember that name. James Smith. And evidently he was home and he tripped and fell, hit his head, and died from a head injury. He was 48 years old, right? It happens all the time. And every time something like this happens that I read about, I think, why can't I just be happy to be alive? Like, what is with that? Like, why can't we just be happy to be alive? Because it ended for him this week. It ended for him this week. It ended for a lot of people this week. But why can't we be satisfied with that? Why can't we possibly have just a little bit of joy? Or just a little pulse of gratitude about things? I mean, really, folks, I'm thinking to myself, really, can't you just do that? You know, it's not always good news. It's not always good news in our life. And Pema Chodron would say this: whatever is happening, this is the path to enlightenment. Whatever is happening, this is the path to enlightenment. I mean, isn't it up to us to accept life as it is? We don't like it. We don't like it, especially if we don't like it, we don't like it. You know, we don't like to accept life as it is. You know, there are things I can no longer do. There are places I can no longer go. There are foods I can no longer eat. Those of us who are old know those. You know, can't do it anymore. Can't do it. Allergic to ice cream. Renee's like, let's have ice cream. I'm like, nah, it hurts my stomach. You know, ice cream. Well, what are you going to do? Eat ice cream and have a stomach ache, or not eat ice cream? It's your choice. Or when you're younger, it's like, oh, you know, I lost my significant other. Maybe he left me. Maybe she left me. The family I know disintegrated. You know, it's not the same anymore. Things aren't the way I want them to be. You know, the job I love pays next to nothing. I can't afford to pay my rent. All these things are happening in my life. My children are ignoring me. They're not paying attention to what I have to say. I mean, look at my life. It's a freaking mess. But I say, I'm alive. Like, I'm alive. Those other 2 people amongst a bunch of other people aren't even here anymore. Like, I'm alive. And I think that's the message that came through for me this week. What was simply that. Like, what if you allowed yourself to simply be where you are? But I'm sad. Well, allow yourself to be sad. I'm happy. Well, good for you. Be happy. I'm content. Yay. I'm frustrated. Well, feel the frustration. Like, I think the problem is we try to run away from all that stuff. We think accepting life means that's the end of the story and I'll be there all the time. It's not. It's simply acknowledging where I am and having the experience of that. Because we all know this, and we probably have said it, especially to other people, that you can't get over it, you have to go through it. Right? It's always somebody else, though. You know, I'm sorry, you just have to get through it. You can't get around it. Right? Look in the mirror and say that. That's how it works. That's how life is lived. Life is lived by going through whatever it is that's right in front of you. Right? That's the truth of it. So, that's our choice. Our choice is how we want to live it, but we have to live it. We can live it with resistance and angst and wanting to control it. We can live pushing all the hard stuff down, getting it out of the way, and yeah, I'm fine. Everything's good. You know, meantime, you got this trail of smoke behind you, right? Or maybe we like to live it as if, you know, we'll just blame everybody else for our troubles. You know, we do that. We do that all the time. And don't think it's just, I mean, it's you and me. It's not all of them. It's you and me. Because we're out, well, if they would just do this, everything would be good. Yeah. Blame somebody else. Or we can decide to live what's in front of us, and that's it. We can decide to do that. But it's hard, especially when life is hard and when it's thrown us curveballs. That kind of stuff is hard. But the question isn't, is life hard? The question is, how do you want to live? How do you want to live is the question. And the answer to that is up to you. How do you want to live? That's it. I mean, how do we do that, though? Because we get stuck in this idea of acceptance because we think accepting the hard stuff means giving up and being, the victim of all of it. When acceptance, like I said, is merely deciding to live the moment that's in front of me. To live it. The hardest stuff to live, I'm looking at you, Cynthia, thinking about the hardest stuff that I know you've lived, at least the things that I know about. The hardest stuff. You gotta live it. I mean, that's the choice. Accepting it is deciding to live it in the moment. That's what it means. And acceptance is what helps us control our mind. Because our mind is what takes us away from the moment. Our mind likes to spin up a story, doesn't it? And it will spin a yarn a mile long about what happened and why it happened and who's to blame and why it's not good, worrying about all this. Our mind goes there. And so to live in the moment and to accept the life and what is in front of me has to do with controlling the mind. So I've been reading this book. I picked it up at the library, which for me was really not good because I wanted to underline a bunch of stuff. And now I have small light pencil marks that I'll have to erase before I take it back to the Pine Valley branch. So if you pick it up there and you see something, please erase it from me. But so this book is called The Buddhist on Death Row. And it's the story of a man who is on death row, who became a Buddhist. I mean, that's the title, right? I don't need to tell you anything more about that. But this is, let me see if I can find this page 180. I wanted to read 195. Okay. See, when I can't put pencil, and it's hard. So he's been in prison since 1981. One of his teachers was Pema Chodron. Okay, who visited him there on death row many times. Okay, and she gave him this parable, which she also has in a book that she wrote. But I want to share this parable as a way of describing what it means to stay focused on the moment at hand, and that's how we accept life as it is, to stay right here. Pema told him this parable. A woman was walking in the forest and comes upon a pride of tigers. The tigers begin chasing her, and she runs. They're getting closer when she comes to a cliff. There are vines growing down, and holding on to them, she descends. But then she looks below her and sees more tigers waiting at the bottom of the cliff. Yeah, right? She looks again upward and sees a mouse gnawing at the vines she's holding on to. Not good. And that's the way we are with life. Not good. When she looks straight ahead, she sees beautiful, ripe strawberries growing in front of her. She looks up and sees the tigers. She looks down and sees the tigers. She looks above her head and sees the mice, chewing on the vines that she clings to. Then she takes a strawberry and savors it. Right? That's what it's like. That's what it's like to accept life as it is. The tigers are still there. Up and down. The mice are still there. We still might be holding on. But to train our mind to get away from the mice and the tigers is to focus on the strawberry and decide that that's where we're going to train our mind to be in the present moment. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? Yeah, right. Because here's what happened. The mind, when it goes like it goes, steals the moment. It steals the moment. The mind steals the moment. That's what I've decided. It steals the moment. It carries it away and prevents us from living our life, the only place we can, which is in the moment. So this book, again, is about Jarvis J. Masters. In 1981, he was convicted of 13 armed robberies. He was 19 years old. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And he spent those years at San Quentin. While he was in San Quentin, he was approached by a gang, which is not an unusual thing, convinced him to join, had this loyalty to this gang, who then proceeded to frame him for the murder of a guard at that same prison. He was convicted in 1985 of conspiracy to kill that guard, and he was given the death sentence. Today, in 2023, he is still on death row. He is still on death row. He was introduced to the concepts and tenets of Buddhism by a woman who came to interview him to defend him during his sentencing, to tell his side of the story, as it were. Right? As you might imagine, he did not have the kind of childhood that was nurturing. We'll just say that. All right? And at 19, and before 19, he got himself in a lot of trouble. But she introduced him to the tenets of Buddhism. And many years later, which was, I think, in 2011, all right, he was convicted in 1981, 1985 given the death sentence. In 2011, he's having his big appeal before the courts after new evidence was found. In the meantime, he had been practicing Buddhism. He had been practicing meditating. He had been practicing sitting and trying to still his mind in his tiny cell on death row. So I thought to myself, yeah, and you are complaining about sitting in your chair in your, like really, this man learned how to do this, right? And so as his appeal is coming up, he's getting nervous though, because there's a chance, his lawyers have convinced him that, there's a real chance here with this new evidence that there's a possibility for your death sentence to be commuted. And he worked with himself. And at one point he said to Pema Chodron when he was talking to her, I just have to keep remembering and reminding myself that thoughts about the future lead to torment. But when I'm in the moment, like now here with you, he told her, I'm okay. He's waiting to hear, and that's where he was able to get himself to. But he didn't stay there very long. While he was in prison, he got married. So he had a wife. Okay. Yeah. Why are we surprised at that? It happens. Visited by her, visited by many Buddhist teachers who helped him, right? But he really was very hopeful about getting out. But the decision was handed down, and it was a brutal blow. The judge was unconvinced by his lawyer's arguments, and so done. Didn't happen. Jarvis was very broken. He tried to exercise, but he couldn't. He wrote stories. He published books while he's been in prison, by the way. And he wrote, but his stories went nowhere. And he was too demoralized to meditate. He was despondent for weeks. And during that period, a visiting monk pointed out that Jarvis's reaction wasn't very Buddhist-like. Jarvis replied with a very forceful expletive that I won't repeat right here. Well, when he was talking to Pema Chodron about it, Pema laughed. Pema laughed and told him that it was exactly the right reaction. The Buddha couldn't have said it better himself. He said that moment of laughter shifted something in him, and that night he had this dream. And he drifted off to sleep, and he woke up gasping for air like a drowning person. And after he frantically paddling upwards, he reached the surface and he swallowed the oxygen. He felt cleansed. And he felt a release after a months-long delusion in which he'd succumbed to what Pema Chodron calls Shenpa, the Buddhist concept of attachment, which she translated into getting hooked on an idea. See, encouraged by his well-meaning friends and his dream of being with his wife Marie, he'd gotten hooked on the fantasy of being free from San Quentin, and in the process he left behind his practice of living with the strawberry. And that's what we do, isn't it? We're like, well, it's got to happen, right? He recovered from that when he remembered the truth of how to live in the moment. And so he went, he meditated, and the next morning he called one of his attorney who was commiserating with him, and he interrupted her and he said this, guess what? I never told you this. So every morning on the way to court and every afternoon, the guards led me to and from the prison on this van, and this winding sidewalk cut through this huge green grassy lawn. And the last day, in spite of the guards and chains, I pushed to the edge of the sidewalk and stepped off. I took 1, 2, 3 steps before they yanked me back on to the concrete. He said, Kelly, don't you see? I walked on the grass. He said, I walked on the grass. The first time in 30 years I walked on grass. I'm like, are you blown away? I'm like, oh my God, that's where he got himself to. I walked on grass. He remembered he walked on grass. That's like remembering the strawberry and the vines and the tigers up and down and the mice. It's incredible. That's not the end of the story, even though it's toward the end of the book. Because there's a last appeal. The appeal of habeas corpus that his attorneys are certain is going to result in his, if not his exoneration, he's going to come off of death row. Right? And Jarvis is worried because he knows what happened this time to him. He knows that he allowed himself to hope, to make up those stories, to allow his mind to go somewhere that was uncertain, and it almost killed him. Right? It almost killed him. His lawyers were once again optimistic. He made plans with Marie, his wife. But he understood how poisonous hope could be, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't help but hope. Playing out scenarios that he wished for freedom, for justice, all those things. It was another Buddhist just messing with his mind, man. Messing with his mind. You're supposed to hope or not hope. What in the world? It's the cone. It's the thing that can't be understood, right? Pema Chodron told him this: not being attached does not mean not feeling. The point is to not deny yourself your feelings, not to shut yourself down and pretend you aren't human. See, that's one of the examples I gave, like pushing everything down and pretending you're okay. Like, that's not what it's about. Sit with the feeling of hope. Allow it in. Don't block it. Don't pretend it's not happening. Okay? But a week went by, and his anxiety increased. And another week went by, and his anxiety increased. And Pema's telling him, you feel both things. Like, have you ever gone to a spiritual advisor or a coach or someone and they tell, well, just do this. And you're like, holy crap, I can't, And here he is. Like, this is his last chance. This is it. This is it. Death row. Death row. Right? It continued. He worried. He worried about what he would do when he got out, if he could find work, if he'd be able to earn a living. He already published 2 books. Could he be a writer? He had a lot to say about the prison system, but would it really work living on the outside? He felt a shiver when he thought about sitting with Marie at a restaurant or cafe and needing to put his back to the door because he would be so paranoid about somebody coming to take him back. There were nobody else would be watching over him and like they are in prison, ready to thwart an attack. And his wife visited. She pictured where they'd live, and what they'd have in their home and where it would be, or if they should rent a cabin somewhere, and how he would acclimate to life outside. This whole thing, see what the mind does? See what the mind does? 2 weeks, 3 weeks longer. He tried to hang out in the middle. But you know what? It was too hard. He allowed himself to go there. And he finally got the news when his lawyer showed up. He didn't have to say a word when he looked at his pained face to realize it wasn't going to happen for him. He was not getting out of prison. He was not getting a new trial. It was not going to happen. It just about destroyed him, as you might imagine. As you might imagine. But what he was able to do, because he had established this practice, which I'll say maybe that's where we need to focus, maybe that's where I need to focus, is to rely on that practice. Even though he went down into a dark place, he didn't have to go very far to get to that prison cell, to be in that dark place, to realize that meditation and bringing myself back to the moment was what needed to happen. One of the things he did in order to do that was decide to get divorced from Marie, because he realized that he was having her in prison as well by her attachment to him. And he was taking his focus away from the life in front of himself by thinking about the life with her. He said, do I love her? Yes, absolutely. Is it the relationship that makes sense so that I can live the life with this in front of me? No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. He said, when I said that we should divorce, I thought I was freeing her, but I was freeing myself too. This hoping and planning wasn't just a burden on her, but on me. I was having to hold her up, act like I was sure I'd get out, making those plans. I wanted them to be true, but I also didn't want to hurt or disappoint her. That was a burden. I'm not in a place where I can hold anyone else up anymore. The problem isn't love. I love her. I know she loves me. But what if I choose not to focus on getting out, but on where my life is? What if I choose on focusing on where my life is? How about that? I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about this guy able to do that where he is. That's incredible to me. Incredible to me. How hope destroyed him, almost destroyed him. But what saved him was meditation. What saved him was a practice to bring himself back to center. Accepting his life as it is. Reaching out when he needed help, but accepting where he is. What a lesson for us. You see, our hopefulness is too often attached to an outcome. Hope is not an outcome. Hope is not an outcome. Hope is a way of feeling now. That's what hope is. Hope is a lightness of being. Hope is living possibility. But hope is not a particular outcome. You know, I say, my way of saying it is, not everybody gets out of the wheelchair. You know, not everybody gets out of the wheelchair. But that doesn't mean that life is not important or can't be fulfilled and fulfilling. Right? Because hope is a feeling, not an outcome. That's the truth. And that's what I want. Here's the questions. Well, hope is this. In just a few words, hope is this. I will be okay. That's it. That's my mantra for hope. Having read this, having been reminded of this, hope is I will be okay. I'll be okay. If I can get to I am okay, great. But I will be okay. I will be okay. The questions about life are, how can I be useful? What can I offer here in this moment? How could I inhabit this moment? This one in front of me. That's the one. That's the only one. And then to breathe in and to breathe out. To remember that breath. To remember that breath. To pray, to meditate, whatever you call that, to come into the stillness. And remember what Pema says. She says, everything that's happening is your path to enlightenment. Everything that's happening. So breathe. See the strawberry? Savor the strawberry. Amen. So let's take that into meditation this morning. Perfect transition, right? To be still. To have a chance to be still together. To be present. To accept my life is to bring my full awareness and focus into the present moment. This is what it looks like right now. Breathe in and breathe out. And no matter the wolves and the lions and the mice, I'm alive. I am alive right here. Let me unburden myself from what I've carried up to now. Let me choose to not pick up anything that will burden me from here on out. Let me step, one step at a time. Breathing in and breathing out. Simply this. begin again the story of your life. Amen.